Okay, class. So I welcome you back to another important lecture. And for today, we would be looking on toward another kind of the chemical communication or the coordination that is brought about in the human body. And this kind of the coordination is what we refer to this as the chemical coordination or the chemical communication. You see that in our human body we have got different organ systems, and all of those different organ systems they have got different work to be performing. And this is important that we must bring about the communication between these different body parts. So this communication actually in the body is carried by with the help of the electrical signals, and they were the electrical impulse. And the second way around is what we call this as a hormone, we say. So here we have to be very much clear about that what do we mean by the word hormone and what do we mean by the word gland. So this hormone, wherever this is coming in your subject, so you would say that this is a chemical substance and this chemical substance is produced by the gland, and then ultimately this would come into the blood, and this blood would take this hormone or a chemical signal to either one or more specific target organ that would be lying very far away from that gland which actually secreted it, and in that way it would help the transmission of information from one part of an organism's body to another part of the organism's body, and over there in the target organ this would bring about the change in it. Like if I were to talk about for a moment, so you see that here we have this brain and here we have this kidneys. In the kidneys, we have the collecting ducts, and in the collecting ducts, we want the reabsorption of the water. And for that purpose, there has to be the coming up of the hormone, and that hormone is the antidiuretic hormone. So you see that this brain is lying at some other part, and the kidneys are lying at another part. If they have communicated with one another, so this was thanks partly to this chemical signal that we have to what we are referring to this as the hormone, we say. So we actually need to be aware of that what gland types do we have in our human body. So broadly, these glands that I am talking about, so they can be categorized into being the endocrine glands and then the exocrine glands. And whenever the word endocrine gland is coming, so this simply means that whenever there would be the excretion of the hormone or the chemical signal directly into the blood plasma, so such gland would be regarded as an endocrine gland. And among the fundamental examples that we have here in this case, so we have this pancreas coming, we have this adrenal gland coming, and then in the human, specifically in the males, we have the testes, and in the female individuals, we have the ovaries. So they are the endocrine glands. And if I were to talk about the exocrine glands, so they would give a chemical secretion, and that chemical secretion would be carried to the target organ. And this would not be done with the blood, but rather than with the help of a tubulated structure that they have in them. And this would be the duct with us. And if I were to quote you some of the examples of the exocrine glands, so we have got this sweat gland with us, and then we have got this salivary gland with us. Now, if you were to remember the alimentary canal, also you see that here we have the mouth, and in the mouth we have the upper jawbone and the lower jawbone. Then at the back side of the lower jaw, we have this salivary gland with us, and the salivary gland was taking the saliva into the mouth with the help of this tubulated structure or the duct, and that was the salivary duct. So here you see that the saliva is not getting into the blood directly, but rather than is entering into the mouth with the help of this duct. So these exocrine glands, they are the duct-containing glands, and the endocrine glands are ductless glands because they would give the chemical excretion directly into your blood plasma. So if we were to be moving next, so this is something very important from the paper point of view that we must be aware of that where do these major endocrine glands would be lying. So you see that if I just talk from the top of the body, so here we have got the brain or the skull, and here we have got this master gland, and this master gland is the pituitary gland. Why we call this as the master gland? Because this would regulate or would control the secretion of other glands. So this is why this is master gland. And if we were to see this neck area, so in the neck there would be the presence of this gland with us, and this is a thyroid gland, and this thyroid gland actually releases a hormone out of it, and that hormone is the thyroxine hormone. I'm not talking about their role at the moment, we will see in a while. And if I just come into the lower body part where we have this abdominal cavity coming, so you see that on the top of the kidneys we have this gland line, and this gland is what we call this as the adrenal gland. And this adrenal gland would be releasing a hormone out of it, and that hormone is entitled as the adrenaline hormone. Likewise, you see that here we have got another organ coming with us, and this is the pancreas. And the pancreas, they are important in terms of the blood glucose metabolism, and out of the pancreas, two fundamental hormones would be secreted out into the blood. Among them, we have the insulin. And the second hormone that we have with us, so this would be the glucagon with us. Now, moving onward, if we talk about the male individuals, so in the male individuals, we have their testes, and out of the testes, there would be release of this hormone, and this hormone is the testosterone hormone, we say. Now, the thing doesn't end here. Now, in the female reproductive tract, like we have got their paired structure, and this paired structure, they are the ovaries, we say. And the ovaries would release the hormone out of it, and that hormone would be the estrogen hormone, and that is also the other hormone that we have getting released out of the ovaries, and that would be the progesterone hormone, we say. And now here we have to actually crack two major things, that how come these hormones they would be transported, and how come these hormones that we have got they would be having an impact or an influence on the cells of the target organs. So the scenario is that the gland is lying at some other part of the body, and their target organs they are lying at another part of the body. So all of the endocrine glands that we have, so they are having a very good blood supply in them. And in the blood we know there would be the blood plasma. So these endocrine glands they would make the hormones, and they would simply take them into the blood plasma. And we know that the blood plasma that we have in the blood, so it keeps on, you could say, moving throughout the body. So ultimately, it would go toward the target organ. So here, if I were to show this diagram, so here I have made this major endocrine gland of our body, and this is the pancreas with us. And you see that in the pancreas, we have these cells in them. And what these cells they are doing, that they are releasing the hormone into the blood plasma. And now this blood plasma, you see that it once it has come into the bloodstream, so now it would keep on flowing. And ultimately, when these hormone molecules, when they have come toward their target organs, so these hormone molecules, they would diffuse out, or they would get out of the blood capillaries, and they would come here in the tissue fluid that we have got in between these blood capillaries and the tissues of my body. And then these hormone molecules, once they are there in this tissue fluid, so they would go and then they would bind with the protein receptors. And these protein receptors, they have the shape complementary to the hormone molecule. So the time it would bind with it, then it would keep on be regulating, or it would be controlling the functions that would be taking place within these target cells, and not necessarily that the protein receptor that have to bind with the hormone, they can only lie in the cell membranes, but they can also lie within the cells as well. So if they would bind here, or if they would go into the cells and then they would bind to the protein receptor, so ultimately in this way the activities of the target cells would be controlled. So if I were to read these points, that how come the hormone influences the chemical reactions that occur within the target cells. So we say that the target cells that we have, so they have in their cell surface membrane, or the inside of them, some specialized protein receptors. And these protein receptors, they have the shape complementary to the hormone molecule. So the time they bind with these protein receptors, so the activities of the target cells, they would get to be influenced by these hormone molecules that we have here. Now moving on quick. let us just look on toward what important hormones we have and what effect or the role they are performing. So, if I were to talk about the adrenaline hormone, so this is produced by the adrenal gland, and this the role is that it would prepare my body for the fight or the flight situation. And what effect this hormone has on the body, that it would increase the heart and the breathing rate, and this would also dilate the pupils that we have on the center of the eye so that more of the light can enter into the eyes. Now, likewise, if I were to talk about the insulin, so this is released by the pancreas, and the role of this insulin is that it would lower the blood glucose level. How this would lower it up? Like when this would insulin would be carried to the muscles and the liver, so over there it would cause the liver to convert excessive glucose that we have in it, and it would be converted into a complex sugar, and that is the glycogen, and in that way the excess glucose would be stored for to be used later when this would be required. If you remember, in the human, in the male testes, we have got this hormone being released out of it, and this is the testosterone hormone. And the role is that this is one of the major hormone that is released in the males. And this would lead to the development of the male secondary characteristics. And by the male secondary characteristics, what we mean is that when the male individuals they reach the age of the puberty, so they would start developing or growing the hairs on their face, under the armpits, and in the pubic areas, and their voice would sharpen. So these are the male secondary characteristics, and they are under the influence of the hormone testosterone, which is released by the testes. Now, moving onward from the ovaries that we have in the female reproductive tract, there would be excretion of this estrogen hormone, and like the testosterone is the major hormone of the male individuals. Likewise, the estrogen hormone is the main sex hormone that we have in the female. And again, they would develop the female secondary characteristics. Like when the female they reach the age of puberty, so in them the menstrual cycle starts, and by the menstrual cycle they would start releasing the eggs, and they would start developing their uterus, so that in case if the sperm would get into their body, and post fertilization the uterus could be prepared for the implantation process, and in that way the female individuals they would become pregnant. Other than that, by the female secondary characteristics, again the thing is that they would start developing growing the hair on their face, under the armpits, in the pubic areas, and the size of their mammary glands would increase, and they would initiate the menstrual cycle in their bodies, and in that phase of the life they can also get pregnant. So this is how the major hormones that we have in the body, the role and the effects they have, and I hope you would be clear with all of this.